The summer of 1945 was unlike any other. Europe was littered with the scars of a devastating war, cities reduced to rubble, and the weary world struggling to grasp the sheer scale of destruction that had just unfolded. Across the continent, Allied forces had pushed the German army back, liberating towns, cities, and villages one by one. The roar of artillery had faded, replaced by an eerie silence, broken only by the echoes of human suffering and the slow, painstaking task of uncovering the secrets left behind by a collapsing regime. Yet, in the shadow of the Alps, in a remote corner of Bavaria, a discovery was about to shake the world's understanding of the war. It was a secret so vast, so meticulously hidden, that even the most seasoned Allied officers could hardly believe it. As the Allies advanced deeper into Germany, their intelligence reports hinted at unusual activity in the mountains. Strange noises, reports of flights, and rumors of experimental aircraft had been dismissed by many as the desperate whispers of a defeated army clinging to hope. But in the minds of a few inquisitive officers, something didn't add up. Germany, facing total collapse, had no fuel, no pilots, and no infrastructure to sustain new aircraft production, or so everyone believed. And yet, something hinted that there was more, something hidden from the prying eyes of the world. The idea that an entire fleet could be concealed in a cavernous complex seemed absurd. How could hundreds of planes, some of them the latest designs, remain untouched, undetected by Allied reconnaissance? The terrain itself was harsh and unforgiving. Jagged peaks loomed above, snow and ice still clinging stubbornly to the upper slopes even in late spring. Hidden among these mountains were countless caves, natural formations twisted over centuries by wind and water, and now they might be hiding the last vestiges of a dying war machine. On May 10th, a small reconnaissance team was dispatched to a particularly remote valley. Their instructions were simple: investigate any signs of unusual construction and report back. Armed only with their maps, binoculars, and rifles, the soldiers trudged through dense forests and over treacherous slopes. Each step was a reminder that this mission was dangerous, not from enemy soldiers, but from the sheer unpredictability of the wilderness. Hours passed with nothing but the sounds of birds, rushing streams, and the occasional collapse of loose rock. Yet, just as dusk settled and shadows stretched long across the mountain face, they noticed something peculiar: the entrance to a cavern partially camouflaged with natural rock formations and brush. It was unlike any cave they had seen before. The opening was massive, wide enough for vehicles to enter, and the faint scent of oil and metal lingered in the air. The team approached cautiously, flashlights cutting through the darkness as they moved deeper into the cavern. What they found would stun them. Lined up in neat rows, some covered with tarps, others glinting in the dim light, were airplanes. Hundreds of them. Each plane was an engineering marvel, sleek and silent in its repose, waiting as though for a war that had already ended. Messerschmitt, Focke-Wulfs, experimental designs that had only existed in prototypes. Every model they could imagine was here, hidden from the world. The discovery was monumental. The Allied officers were speechless. For years, Germany's air force had been thought to be crippled, its industry shattered by relentless bombing raids. Yet, here, in a hidden corner of the Alps, lay proof that the Nazis had been working in secret, stockpiling weapons and technology, biding their time in a war that they knew they could no longer win. Questions raced through their minds. How had they built all these planes without detection? Who had flown them? And perhaps most chilling of all, what would have happened if these planes had been unleashed at the final moment? Historical records had already documented Germany's desperate push to develop advanced aircraft late in the war. Jet engines, innovative designs, and experimental weaponry were being produced in scattered factories and secret workshops. But even the most daring historians had underestimated the scale and ambition of these operations. Most of these hidden planes had been constructed in what the Germans called a geheime Werft, a secret factory deep underground. Far from the reach of Allied bombers, Tucked within the natural fortifications of the Alps, these caverns were an industrial marvel. Entire assembly lines had been transported piece by piece, workers secretly ferried into the mountains, and engineers tasked with pushing the boundaries of aeronautical technology in total secrecy. The human element of this story was just as astonishing. Many of the engineers and pilots were conscripts, civilians who had been coerced into service by the Nazi regime. They worked under the constant threat of punishment, knowing that failure meant death. And yet, their work, hidden away in freezing mountain caves, had produced some of the most advanced aircraft of the era. These were planes that could have changed the course of the war if deployed machines capable of speed, precision, and lethal efficiency beyond what Allied forces had imagined. The soldiers, initially sent on a simple reconnaissance mission, quickly realized the significance of their find. Each plane told a story, every tarp covering a fuselage hiding decades of engineering secrets. As they made their way deeper into the cave, they documented the rows, counting and photographing, sending urgent reports back to headquarters. Word of the discovery spread quickly, and soon, military strategists, historians, and engineers were poring over the initial reports, eager to understand how such a massive operation had remained invisible. But the cave was more than just a storage site. Evidence suggested that some of the planes had been actively maintained, engines occasionally tested, and parts replaced, indicating that the Germans had expected to use them, perhaps at the very last moment, in a final, desperate strike. It was a chilling realization. Even in defeat, the Nazis had prepared contingencies that could have prolonged the war, wreaking further havoc on a Europe already torn apart. The initial exploration barely scratched the surface. As Allied forces secured the area, they realized that these caverns were part of a far larger network, stretching deeper than anyone had imagined. Tunnels branched in multiple directions, some leading to smaller storage chambers, others possibly to secret maintenance areas. The true scale of this operation, hidden under the veil of rugged mountains, was almost incomprehensible. For the soldiers standing amid the rows of planes, the scene was surreal. It was as if time had frozen, leaving a snapshot of German ambition at its most audacious. Each plane was a testament to ingenuity and obsession, a chilling reminder of what can happen when technological brilliance is harnessed for destruction. And while the war had officially ended, the shadow of what might have been hung over them, a stark warning of the hidden dangers that linger when secrets are left unchecked. As the sun set over the Alps, casting long shadows across the cave's entrance, the soldiers and officers gathered outside. They looked back at the hidden fleet, a silent, almost ghostly monument to a war that had claimed millions of lives. What Germany had built in secret would be studied for decades, influencing aviation, military strategy, and historical understanding. And yet, in that moment, the only thing that mattered was the awe and disbelief that such a place had existed untouched, unseen, and unimaginable until now. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Allied forces secured the perimeter around the cave, bringing in specialists from every branch, engineers, pilots, and military historians, all eager to get a closer look at this astonishing find. Soldiers who had spent years in combat could hardly hide their amazement. The planes, some pristine and others bearing the subtle scars of hurried construction, were a revelation. Rows upon rows stretched into darkness, each fuselage sleek, aerodynamic, and whispering of speed and power that had been the envy of every air force in the world. The scale of the operation, the precision with which it had been carried out, left even the most experienced officers stunned. As the experts began to catalog the planes, it became clear that this was no ordinary stockpile. Many of the aircraft were designs that had been rumored but never officially confirmed. Jet-powered fighters, prototypes that pushed the boundaries of aerodynamics, and experimental bombers built for range and stealth, all hidden away, untouched by Allied bombs or sabotage. Engineers marveled at the quality of the craftsmanship. Rivets were perfectly aligned, panels fitted seamlessly, and every mechanical component had been meticulously tested. Some planes still carried fuel, oil, and lubricants, suggesting that the Germans had intended to put them into action at a moment's notice. The cave itself was a marvel of logistics. Large enough to house hundreds of planes, it had been outfitted with maintenance bays, lighting, and even storage areas for spare parts. Makeshift workshops had been set up along the cavern walls, with benches, toolkits, and charts pinned to rock surfaces. Evidence suggested that skilled technicians had worked here in shifts, living for weeks or even months underground, hidden from the world above. Some walls still bore chalk markings, diagrams of wing structures, notes on engine performance, and cryptic calculations that hinted at secret experiments. It was a working factory in every sense, buried deep inside the Alps, shielded by nature itself. The planes themselves told the story of desperation and innovation. Germany, facing shortages of raw materials and constant bombardment of its factories, had turned to remote mountainsides to continue production. Standard steel had been replaced by lighter alloys, and fuel efficiency was optimized in ways that engineers at the time had never seen. Some aircraft had radical designs, featuring swept wings, unusual tail assemblies, and jet engines capable of speeds that outmatched most Allied fighters. It was as if the Germans had been racing against time, building a fleet that could change the course of the war in its final moments. Among the most fascinating discoveries were the documentation and flight logs left behind. Pilots' notes, blueprints, and technical manuals provided insight into the secret operations that had been conducted here. The Allies were particularly intrigued by the level of secrecy maintained throughout construction. Guards had been stationed discreetly along mountain paths, and supply lines had been carefully concealed. The operation had required coordination on a massive scale, with workers transported under cover of night and entire assembly components carried in pieces to avoid detection. It was an industrial ballet performed under the watchful eyes of mountains and soldiers alike. One of the most unsettling aspects of the discovery was realizing just how close these planes had been to becoming operational. Fuel and ammunition were stored nearby, hidden in barrels and crates, some even labeled with intended targets. Maps and charts indicated potential flight paths, showing strategic cities and military installations that might have been hit in a final surge. The Allied forces could hardly comprehend the implications. Had the Germans managed to deploy even a fraction of these aircraft, the last month of the war could have been prolonged, and countless more lives might have been lost. The human side of the story was equally compelling. Interviews with captured engineers and pilots revealed the immense pressure they had lived under. Many had been coerced into secrecy, threatened with imprisonment or death should they speak to outsiders. Yet, despite these conditions, the work had been done with precision and dedication. The soldiers who had once dismissed rumors of hidden fleets now understood the scale of the commitment and fear that had kept this operation hidden for so long. It was a chilling reminder of how ideology and desperation can drive ordinary people to extraordinary feats. Even as the initial excitement settled, new questions emerged. How had Allied intelligence missed this? The cave was situated in a region that had been under surveillance for years. The answer lay in the combination of geography and German cunning. The mountainous terrain was treacherous and easily overlooked, and the Nazis had gone to extraordinary lengths to mask any signs of activity. From aerial reconnaissance, the cave appeared to be just another rock face, its entrances camouflaged, its interior invisible to satellites of the era. It was a testament to human ingenuity and the dangerous potential of unchecked secrecy. Historians began to piece together the implications of the find. Germany's late-war aviation program had been far more ambitious than previously thought. The hidden fleet contained aircraft that could have dominated the skies had they been deployed. Jet-powered fighters capable of outpacing Allied bombers, heavy bombers with advanced stealth features, and reconnaissance planes designed to slip behind enemy lines, all of it had been constructed, maintained, and stored in secret. The sheer audacity of building such a fleet in the face of imminent defeat was astonishing. Technological experts who examined the planes were quick to note how ahead of their time some designs were. Concepts that wouldn't become mainstream for decades had been implemented in the early 1940 seconds. Jet propulsion, advanced aerodynamics, and the material science combined to create machines that were both elegant and lethal. Engineers traced innovations in the wings, fuselage, and cockpit design, recognizing that these planes were not only functional but revolutionary. Some sketches indicated potential future applications, suggesting that German engineers had been thinking far beyond the immediate needs of the war. Yet, despite all this ingenuity, the fleet had remained unused. The reasons were simple yet haunting: fuel shortages, lack of trained pilots, and the rapid advance of Allied forces meant that Germany never had the opportunity to put these planes into action. What could have been the devastating force of war became instead a frozen testament to human ambition and desperation. The planes sat in silence, rows upon rows of steel and oil, as if mocking the world with their unfulfilled purpose. For the soldiers, engineers, and historians exploring the cave, the experience was surreal. To walk among the planes, to trace the rivets and examine the controls, was to step back in time and witness history frozen in a moment of tension and anticipation. There was a strange mixture of awe and unease, admiration for the craftsmanship, and fear at imagining what might have been. Each plane was more than metal and machinery. It was a story of ambition, secrecy, and the relentless drive of a nation at war. As news of the discovery spread, journalists and photographers arrived, eager to capture the hidden fleet. Images of the planes, carefully lined in the cavern, shocked the public. For many, it was difficult to imagine that such a stockpile had existed, hidden in plain sight, while Europe burned around it. The cave became a symbol of what war leaves behind: not only destruction and loss, but also secrets, ingenuity, and the haunting possibility of alternate histories. Some of the more seasoned officers reflected on the lessons this discovery held. War was not only fought on battlefields and in the skies. It was fought in minds, in ingenuity, and in the shadows. The Germans had shown that even in the face of inevitable defeat, ambition and secrecy could produce marvels that defied expectation. The cave, with its rows of sleek, silent aircraft, stood as a warning and a reminder of the lengths humans would go to in pursuit of power, survival, and legacy. The Allied forces moved carefully, documenting, photographing, and eventually transporting some of the planes for study. Each flight control, engine, and wing was analyzed, providing insight into what might have been the next generation of aviation technology. Engineers marveled at designs that anticipated jet propulsion trends and aerodynamics decades ahead of their time. Military planners considered the implications, imagining a final, desperate German strike that, fortunately, never came. And yet, despite all the analysis, a sense of mystery remained. How had such a massive operation gone unnoticed for so long? Who had overseen it? And what other secrets might still lie hidden, tucked away in the mountains or forests of a war-torn continent? The cave was a reminder that history is rarely as simple as it seems, and that the past often holds surprises that challenge our understanding of what was possible. Every day that passed in that cavern brought new discoveries. Manuals in German, handwritten notes on maintenance schedules, and test logs for experimental engines offered a window into a world few had imagined. The planes themselves, silent and majestic, seemed almost alive, a fleet frozen in time, yet brimming with latent power. Soldiers who had once dismissed rumors now walked in awe, humbled by the vision of what human determination, secrecy, and desperation could create. As the sun set each evening, casting long shadows across the cavern floor, a strange quiet descended. The planes seemed to hold their breath, as if waiting for a war that would never return. The soldiers, engineers, and historians left reluctantly, knowing that they had glimpsed something extraordinary, something that would be studied for generations. Even weeks after the initial discovery, the cave continued to captivate and haunt those who entered it. Every corridor revealed new wonders. More planes, hidden compartments, and cryptic schematics scrawled on the walls by anxious hands. Yet with every revelation came an unsettling realization. These were not just planes, but instruments of a war that could have dragged the world back into chaos at a moment's notice. The question that lingered in everyone's minds was the same. How close had humanity come to a completely different ending of World War II? Allied engineers meticulously inspected the planes, documenting engines, control systems, and experimental weapon attachments. Each discovery revealed ingenuity born from desperation, a race against time that had pushed German engineers to the limits of what was technologically possible in the 1,940 seconds. Some planes had never been flown, their wings pristine, tires unscuffed, as if they had been waiting for pilots who would never arrive. Others bore subtle signs of trial runs, evidence that the Germans had tested these machines under extreme secrecy. The soldiers who had first stumbled upon the cavern often returned to walk among the rows of aircraft, silently reflecting on what they were witnessing. There was a surreal quality to it, a fleet built for destruction, perfectly maintained, yet frozen in time. Many of them struggled with a sense of awe mixed with fear, imagining how the war might have turned if these planes had been deployed. Entire campaigns could have been rewritten, lives lost or saved, cities spared or destroyed, all hinging on the fate of machines tucked away in silence beneath the mountains. Historians began piecing together the scope of the German operation. It was far more than a storage site. This cave had been a fully functional production hub, capable of constructing, maintaining, and launching advanced aircraft in secret. The more they investigated, the more astounding it became. Germany had leveraged ingenuity, geography, and coercion to create a hidden armada that rivaled the entire Allied air forces in certain aspects. The planes represented not just engineering prowess, but a careful orchestration of secrecy and logistics movements of materials, skilled labor, and command structure, all shielded from view right under the noses of Allied reconnaissance. And yet, for all the technological marvels and hidden strategies, the fleet remained unused. The Germans, despite their ambitions, had been unable to deploy it. Fuel shortages, the collapse of infrastructure, and the unstoppable Allied advance had rendered their secret weapons impotent. What could have been an apocalyptic force became instead a silent testament to human ingenuity applied to terrifying ends. There was a chilling lesson in this stillness. Even the most advanced technology is meaningless without the capacity to act, and even the most ambitious plans can crumble against the tide of reality. The cave also revealed the human cost of secrecy and obsession. Hidden living quarters bore the marks of the workers who had spent months underground, away from sunlight and normal life. Rusted cooking utensils, makeshift beds, and personal notes carved into the stone walls spoke of fear, exhaustion, and determination. These men and women had lived in shadows, driven by orders and fear, building machines that would never see action. Their lives, entwined with the steel of these planes, offered a somber counterpoint to the mechanical perfection around them. For the Allied commanders, the discovery became a moment of reflection. The war had been fought on battlefields, in skies, and on seas, but it was also fought in hidden corners, in secrecy and ingenuity. This fleet, lying silent beneath the Alps, demonstrated that, even when defeat seems inevitable, ambition and secrecy can produce wonders and horrors that the world is not prepared for. There was relief in knowing these planes had never flown in combat, but also unease in imagining what might have been had circumstances shifted even slightly. Photographs and reports of the hidden fleet spread throughout the military and eventually into public awareness, shocking historians and the general populace alike. People were astonished at the idea that hundreds of advanced aircraft had existed, hidden for years in secrecy. The planes became a symbol of what war leaves behind, not only destruction and loss, but secrets, ingenuity, and the haunting echoes of human ambition. Each aircraft stood as a silent sentinel, a reminder that the world had narrowly avoided an even greater catastrophe. Even decades later, researchers continue to study the cave and its contents. The planes influenced post-war aviation, inspiring engineers and pilots who examined their designs. Lessons learned from the German technology helped shape the next generation of aircraft, jet engines, and aerodynamics. What had begun as a desperate attempt to turn the tide of war became, inadvertently a legacy of innovation and a chilling lesson in ambition, unrestrained by morality. Walking through the cavern, one could almost feel the tension of the past, the invisible presence of engineers, pilots, and soldiers who had once moved through these spaces under the weight of fear and duty. The planes, lined up like a ghostly fleet, seemed almost to breathe in unison, a testament to the power of human determination, both brilliant and terrifying. It was a place where history paused, frozen at a moment of immense consequence, and where the imagination could run wild with the possibilities of what might have been. Eventually, the cavern was secured, the planes catalogued, and many transported to museums or testing facilities. Yet, even as they were removed, the sense of awe remained. Those who had witnessed the fleet could not shake the feeling of having glimpsed a secret world, a parallel history of human ingenuity and ambition that had been hidden in plain sight. The story of the cave, the hidden planes, and the people who built them became legend, a reminder that history is never fully known and that the shadows often hold the most astonishing truths. And so, the mountains returned to their silence. The cave, now emptied of its mechanical marvels, held only echoes of what had been. The planes, once capable of reshaping the skies, were gone, yet their story endured. It is a tale of ingenuity, secrecy, and ambition, a story of a war within a war, hidden from view, and of a world that narrowly escaped yet another chapter of devastation. As the sun sets over the Alps today, the cavern remains silent and mysterious. It whispers of hidden histories, of the power of human creativity in times of desperation, and of the fragile line between victory and catastrophe. The fleet that once lay hidden, meticulously built and preserved, serves as a haunting reminder that the greatest stories are sometimes the ones that nearly remained untold. And while the planes themselves never flew, the story of their existence will continue to soar, a testament to history's deepest secrets, the ingenuity of humankind, and the chilling possibilities that lie in wait when ambition meets desperation.